The first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't the ordinary kind of quiet that drifted over our suburban block in the evenings, but something denser, heavier, as if the air around Darius Collins's house had thickened since his wife's death. A month had passed since Monica was laid to rest, yet her absence lingered in every corner of that yard. The overgrown grass that used to be trimmed each Saturday, the porch light that flickered but was never fixed, the blinds that stayed half closed no matter the hour. I had lived next door to the Collins family for nearly 3 years, though I wouldn't have called us close. Our exchanges were polite, limited to a wave across the driveway or the occasional nod while rolling out the trash bins. Monica had been the kind who smiled generously at strangers, but Darius was quieter, composed in a way that drew little attention to himself. He carried his broad shoulders like armor, his movements efficient, almost guarded. Now, however, that composure was fractured, and each evening revealed the cracks. From my kitchen window, I often caught sight of him on the porch, seated on the same wooden chair, a bottle resting near his boots. Sometimes he stared out at the street, motionless for long stretches, as though hoping the night itself might deliver answers. Other times he leaned forward with his hands pressed against his face, shoulders trembling. I told myself to give him space, that grief had its own rhythm, and a neighbor's intrusion might feel like trespassing. Yet the longer I watched, the more unbearable that silence seemed, not just his, but mine. One Friday evening, I finally stepped outside. The air smelled faintly of rain, heavy clouds pressing low. I carried nothing with me, not even the excuse of taking out the garbage, just the awkward determination of a man who'd run out of reasons to stay away. Darius lifted his head when I approached, his eyes rimmed red. For a moment, I considered retreating, but he gave a slow nod, a gesture that seemed less permission than resignation. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, aware of how small the words sounded. "I should have come by sooner." Darius's voice was rough from disuse. "People don't know what to say. I get it." I lowered myself onto the porch step, leaving space between us. The wood creaked beneath my weight. For a while, neither of us spoke, and I wondered if this had been a mistake. Then Darius exhaled, a long breath that seemed to empty something from his chest. 32 days, he murmured. "Feels like 32 years. I nodded, not sure if he wanted me to answer. The cicadas hummed in the distance, filling the pause. "She used to water those flowers every morning," he continued, gesturing vaguely toward the withered planters by the railing. "Hated leaving them dry, even in the heat. Now I can't bring myself to touch them. Feels like, if I do, it's admitting she's really gone." His words carried no theatrics, just a blunt honesty that cut through the air. I listened, unsure whether to respond with comfort or silence. He rubbed his palms together, as though trying to generate warmth from friction, though the night was far from cold. "I know people think grief is just crying and missing someone," he said. "But it's also the quiet. The house is too damn quiet. Every sound echoes." I found my throat tightening. "If you ever need company," I offered, "I'm next door. No obligation to talk. Sometimes just sitting helps." Darius looked at me for the first time that night, really looked. His eyes, deep and weary, carried both suspicion and gratitude. "That's kind of you, Ethan." Hearing my name in his voice startled me, though it was something simple. I had introduced myself years ago, but rarely had it cross his lips. There was an intimacy in it now, unexpected, and it unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The conversation shifted into safer territory. Work, the changing season, how unpredictable the weather had become. Yet beneath every word lay the rawness of his grief, a steady undercurrent that shaped the rhythm of our talk. I found myself studying his gestures, the way he clenched his jaw when memories threatened, the way his hands lingered near the bottle without lifting a T1 point. A faint drizzle began, drops tapping the porch roof. I offered to leave, but Darius shook his head. "Stay," he said simply that we sat in silence again, the rain filling the gaps. I realized then how rarely I allowed myself such stillness with another person. Most of my evenings passed in solitude, the hum of my computer or the glow of my television my only companions. Yet here, beside this grieving man, silence carried weight, meaning, almost comfort. Without planning to, I placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. The gesture was instinctive, but the moment my palm touched him, I felt the heat of his body beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. He didn't pull away. Instead, he let out a trembling breath, his head bowing forward until his forehead nearly brushed his knees. "I keep thinking I hear her," he whispered, voice breaking. Footsteps in the hall. Her laugh in the kitchen. And then I remember, it's just me. My hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. I had no words to answer such grief, so I didn't try. Sometimes presence mattered more than speech. His sobs came quietly at first, then stronger, the sound of a man who had been holding too much for too long. That I stayed still, steady, my hand a small anchor. For reasons I couldn't explain, I felt an ache in my chest that went beyond sympathy. Watching him unravel stirred something I hadn't expected, an urge not only to comfort, but to protect, to draw closer. The realization unsettled me, though I buried it beneath the immediacy of his sorrow. After a while, his sobs eased. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, embarrassed. "Sorry," he muttered. "Don't be," I replied softly. "You don't have to apologize for feeling." He nodded, eyes fixed on the rain-slick street. "It's been a long time since someone sat here with me." There was no accusation in his voice, just weary truth. I wanted to promise I would sit with him again, that this wouldn't be the last evening we shared on this porch, but I held back. Instead, I simply said, "Anytime." The rain slowed, leaving behind the scent of damp earth. Darius leaned back in his chair, shoulders a little less tense, though still heavy with grief. I rose to my feet reluctantly, sensing the moment had reached its natural close. I stepped off the porch. He called after me. "Ethan." I turned. His expression was unreadable, caught between gratitude and something unspoken. "Thank you," he said. That I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Walking back to my own house, I felt the weight of his gaze lingering on me. For the first time since Monica's passing, the silence between our homes no longer felt impenetrable. It carried a new charge, an undercurrent of connection I hadn't anticipated. That night, as I lay in bed, the image of Darius hunched on his porch returned again and again. His tears, his voice, the warmth beneath my hand, they lingered like a question I wasn't ready to answer. And yet, deep down, I knew this was not the end of it. It was only the beginning.
Ethan had begun measuring his days by silence. Not the kind that filled the apartment when Lucas wasn't home, but the silence that came between them when he was. It stretched across the couch, hovered between their half-spoken jokes, and lingered in the way they avoided eye contact for too long. Work should have been an escape. Deadlines, clients, color palettes, things that didn't ask questions. Yet every time Ethan opened a new design file, his mind drifted back to Lucas's laugh, to the warmth of that almost moment they'd shared. He told himself it was harmless. But even denial sounded dishonest now. Lucas had changed too. He no longer played music loud at midnight or sang into a wooden spoon in the kitchen. He still smiled, but the smiles ended before reaching his eyes. Sometimes Ethan caught him standing by the window, headphones in, lost in thought. When their eyes met, Lucas would look away first. One Thursday evening, Ethan came home early to find Lucas cooking. Garlic and rosemary scented the air. The sound of a knife against the cutting board filled the kitchen. Lucas didn't turn when Ethan entered. "Didn't expect you back yet," Lucas said, voice steady but too casual. "Client meeting got cancelled," Ethan replied, setting his bag down. He watched the rhythm of Lucas's movements, precise, practiced, a little nervous. "You're cooking again." Lucas shrugged. "Figured I'd try something normal." "Normal." The word sat heavy between them. Ethan leaned against the counter, pretending to scroll through his phone. "Ryan called," he said. Lucas's hands paused for a second. "Yeah. He wants to visit next month. Says he misses the city." Ethan tried to smile. "And me, I guess." Lucas nodded once, slicing faster. "That's good. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of forced conversation and clinking silverware. They talked about rent, about a broken faucet, about a new show Lucas had started watching. None of it mattered. Each word was a placeholder for what neither dared to say. Afterward, Lucas went to his room. Ethan stayed behind, stacking plates that didn't need stacking. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and something unspoken, weeks blurred into a pattern of restraint. Ethan avoided the apartment when he could, staying late at work or wandering the streets with headphones on. Lucas filled his nights with friends and late studio sessions. They were both performing distance like it was a survival skill. Then came the night of the rain. Ethan had forgotten his umbrella. By the time he reached the building, his clothes clung to him, cold and heavy. The elevator hummed softly as he waited for it to climb, his mind foggy with exhaustion. When he unlocked the door, the apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the corner. Lucas sat on the couch, a half-empty bottle of wine beside him. "You look like a drowned cat," Lucas said, voice low. Ethan laughed weakly. "Guess the storm won. Come sit. You're shivering." He hesitated. Then he did. The couch dipped slightly under their combined weight. Lucas handed him a towel, and their fingers brushed, brief, accidental, electric. "I've been thinking," Lucas said after a while. "Maybe I should move out." Ethan turned to him. "Why?" "Because whatever this is, it's messing with both of us." Ethan stared at the rain-streaked window. "You think running away fixes that?" Lucas took a slow breath. "No. But staying like this feels worse." The honesty in his tone disarmed Ethan. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink, the ticking clock, the soft hum of rain, the faint smell of wine, all closing in on them. "I never wanted this to get complicated," Ethan murmured. Lucas's voice softened. "It already is." They sat there, caught between guilt and gravity. Words failed them, replaced by a quiet that pulsed with everything unsaid. Lucas looked at Ethan, really looked, as if memorizing the shape of him. "You don't have to say anything," Lucas said finally. "I know you have, Ryan. I just needed to tell you." He stopped himself, shaking his head. "Forget it." Ethan swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. "No, I don't want to forget it." Their eyes locked. Neither moved closer, but something between them shifted, a silent recognition, an emotional surrender without a single touch. After a long minute, Ethan stood. "I should sleep," he said, though sleep was the last thing waiting for him. "Yeah," Lucas replied. His voice cracked slightly. "Good night." Ethan paused in the hallway, watching the faint outline of Lucas's shoulders in the dim light. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease the ache that had settled between them. But he didn't. That night, he dreamed of color, blurred lines, half-drawn shapes, unfinished designs. When he woke, the ache remained, real as breath. The days that followed were quiet again, but not peaceful. Ryan's texts came less often, filled with polite affection rather than warmth. Lucas grew distant, retreating into music that sounded heavier than usual. Ethan listened through the wall some nights, recognizing longing in every chord point. One afternoon, Ryan called while Ethan was at work. His voice was cheerful, practiced. "I booked a flight. I'll be there next Friday." Ethan froze. "That soon?" "Surprise," Ryan said. "It's been too long." Ethan forced a laugh. "Yeah. Too long." After the call ended, he stared at his computer screen until the design blurred. The excitement he should have felt never came. Instead, a cold unease crept through him. Ryan was coming home. To what, exactly? When he returned that evening, Lucas was on the balcony, cigarette in hand. Smoke curled upward, thin and white against the fading sky. Ethan joined him without a word. "Ryan's visiting," he said eventually. Lucas didn't react for a few seconds. Then he nodded. "Good for you." "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like you mean the opposite." Lucas stubbed the cigarette out in the ashtray. "Maybe I do. Maybe I don't know what I mean anymore. Ethan exhaled, long and shaky. Neither do I. The city lights flickered on one by one. Below them, the street buzzed with life, cars, laughter, footsteps. Up here, everything felt suspended, unreal. Lucas turned to him. Do you ever wonder if we just met at the wrong time? Ethan's heart thudded once, hard. All the time. They didn't speak again. The silence wasn't empty now, it was full of recognition, of an ending that hadn't quite begun. Inside, the clock struck midnight. Ryan would arrive in 7 days. Ethan felt the countdown begin, not to reunion, but to reckoning. That he glanced once more at Lucas, who stood motionless by the glass door, a faint reflection caught between light and dark. In that fragile image, Ethan saw what he'd been avoiding all along. This wasn't just friendship strained by proximity. It was love in hiding, waiting for permission to exist. The night air grew colder. Ethan stepped back into the apartment, closing the door softly behind him. Lucas stayed where he was, watching the city lights blur through the glass. Neither of them said goodbye. They didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than anything else, and somewhere, beneath that quiet, both knew, something irreversible had already begun. Ryan's arrival felt like sunlight after a storm, too bright, too sudden. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching him drag his suitcase across the floor, smiling as if nothing had shifted in the months apart. The familiar scent of Ryan's cologne filled the apartment, stirring memories that now felt like echoes. Same couch, same view, Ryan said, glancing around. Feels like nothing's changed. Ethan smiled weakly. Yeah. Everything's the same. But it wasn't. The air itself seemed to know better. Lucas's bedroom door was closed, music played faintly behind it, a muffled beat that hit his silence. Ryan unpacked, talking about airports, deadlines, a new coworker who wouldn't stop texting. Ethan nodded in the right places, but his mind drifted. Every sentence Ryan spoke felt like a bridge that no longer connected. That night, they ate dinner together, 3 plates, 1 table, and a silence that pretended to be politeness. Lucas barely spoke. Ryan didn't seem to notice, but Ethan felt every second like a splinter. Afterward, Ryan stepped out to take a call. The moment the door closed, the tension snapped taut. Lucas gathered the plates. I'll clean up. I can help, Ethan said quietly. They worked side by side, rinsing dishes that didn't need rinsing. Their shoulders brushed once, and both froze. Lucas set a glass down a little too hard. You should be happy, he said finally. He came back for you. Ethan stared at the running water. That's what I'm supposed to be. Lucas's jaw tightened. Then why do you look miserable? Ethan turned off the tap. The sudden silence felt deafening. Because I can't keep pretending nothing happened. Lucas looked at him then, eyes tired, guarded. You don't owe me anything. That's the problem, Ethan said softly. I think I do. Ryan's voice echoed from the hallway, cheerful, unaware. Lucas stepped back. Forget it, he whispered. Don't make this harder than it already is. When Ryan re-entered the room, both men were smiling again, masks in place. The next few days unfolded like theater, rehearsed, shallow, exhausting. Ryan wanted to visit old cafes, to take pictures, to talk about a future Ethan could no longer picture. Lucas stayed scarce, leaving early, returning late. When their paths did cross, words were brief, mechanical. One evening, Ryan suggested a weekend trip to the coast. We need a reset, he said, fingers brushing Ethan's. Just you and me. Ethan hesitated. That sounds nice. But the word nice felt small, dishonest. Later that night, while Ryan slept, Ethan sat on the balcony alone. The city glimmered below, a restless sea of light. The wind smelled faintly of rain again, just like the night. Everything blurred. He thought of Lucas, of all the conversations left half-finished, of laughter swallowed by restraint. He thought of Ryan too, of loyalty, of history, of all the years that had built something solid yet strangely hollow. When he finally went inside, Lucas was standing in the kitchen, half lit by the refrigerator glow, couldn't sleep? Lucas asked quietly. Ethan shook his head. You either. Lucas's smile was faint, sad. I keep trying to stay out of the way. That's not the problem, Ethan said. The problem is I keep wishing you wouldn't. Lucas's breath caught. He leaned against the counter, hands trembling slightly. Ethan, don't. I'm not saying I want to ruin anything, Ethan said. I just can't lie anymore. For a long moment, neither moved. The hum of the fridge filled the space where words should have been. Lucas's eyes glistened with something like pain, or maybe relief. You have to tell him, he said finally. He deserves the truth. I know. Lucas nodded once. Then do it before it destroys you. Morning came gray and heavy. Ryan made coffee, humming under his breath, while Ethan sat at the table, rehearsing 1,000 versions of what he wanted to say. Every one of them ended the same, with loss. Ryan, he began. Ryan looked up, smiling. Yeah. I need to talk to you. The smile faltered. Okay, what's going on? Ethan hesitated, fingers tightening around his cup. Things between us, they're not the same. I've tried to ignore it, but I can't. Ryan frowned, confusion clouding his expression. Is this about the distance? Because I can fix that. I can. It's not just that, Ethan interrupted. His voice was steadier than he expected. It's me. I changed. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling something I shouldn't have. Ryan went still. For someone else? Ethan nodded once. The silence that followed felt endless. Ryan exhaled slowly, setting his cup down. Is it him? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Ryan leaned back, his eyes searching Ethan's face. There was no anger, only a quiet, wounded understanding. I knew something was different, he said. I just didn't want to believe it. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered. Ryan nodded. You always are. He stood, slipping on his jacket with deliberate calm. I'll pack my things tonight. You don't have to explain anything else. Ryan, wait, but Ryan only shook his head. Don't make it harder. Just, be honest with yourself this time. The door closed softly behind him. The sound lingered long after he was gone. By evening, the apartment felt larger than ever. Lucas stood by the window, hands shoved deep into his pockets. When Ethan entered, he didn't turn around. He knows, Ethan said quietly. Lucas nodded. I figured. I told him everything that mattered. Then I guess this is the part where we both start over. Ethan took a step closer. Is that what you want? Lucas hesitated. I don't know what I want. But I know what I don't want anymore, pretending. Ethan let out a shaky breath. Neither do I. The two of them stood there, facing the window, the city stretching endlessly before them. No promises, no declarations, just the fragile relief of truth finally spoken. Lucas broke the silence first. So what happens now? Ethan looked out at the skyline, its lights flickering against the dark. I think we let time decide. Lucas smiled faintly. That's a dangerous plan. Maybe, Ethan said. But it's honest. Outside, the night deepened. The storm that had threatened all day finally broke, rain tapping softly against the glass. Ethan closed his eyes, listening to it, the same sound that had once pulled them together now washing the past clean. When he opened them again, Lucas was watching him, not with desire, but with quiet understanding. No one moved. The rain fell harder. The clock ticked on, and for the first time in months, Ethan felt something close to peace, not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was hidden anymore.